Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Last time we were at the OpTic Major in Texas, iLLeY lifted the trophy with the OpTic team in front of the home OpTic crowd. This year though, iLLeY's probably not even going to be in attendance, but he might well be eyeing up a possibility of a new opportunity in the CDL after this event concludes. What teams could consider his services, or does he need to play the politics game behind the scenes a little bit better in order to get a good spot in the league going forwards? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to discuss. Firstly, there's some exotic here because I thought they were actually expanding the Dallas Challengers event up to 128 teams. That might no longer be the case, or was never the case, because exotic says only 64 teams, so it makes sense to do it as a best of 5, which I can understand really, because best of 3 is the way they usually do it. I think they do a hardpoint search control. It's always not ideal to always find the best team because, you know, we see a fair few reverse sweeps in the CDL 2-0 to 3-2, so doing a lot of, you know, best of 3s is not ideal. Now, Spencer Peterson says from the league, I don't think everyone wants to be in the venue 22 hours a day, so very quickly dismissing the idea of going for a best of 5 approach here, given the fact that there's less teams. Now, you know, let's be honest here, if they did best of 5 the entire tourney, would it take 22 hours a day? You know, obviously a bit of hyperbole there anyway. And exotic does say, hey, winners round 1, losers round 1, do it best of 3, but after that it should be best of 5. The competition is a lot more competitive in the AM scene for a fluky best of 3, if you know what I mean, which I think is fair enough as well. So, you know, interesting point there from exotic saying, hey, after the first couple of rounds, make it a best of 5, rather than what they usually do is wait all the way until, I think it gets like top 16 or something. It's quite a lot of rounds in the tournament before you get to start to do best of 5s, but because there's less teams here than usual, it might make sense to expand that. So we'll see if Spencer Peterson changes his mind, or whether he's going to set in stone on this idea that they're going to keep it as short and as sweet as possible. Couple of quick updates from around the league as well. Arcitys talking about getting slammed by Sam Octane in scrim, so of course Los Angeles Guerrillas versus Los Angeles Thieves behind the scenes. We'll see how Thieves do, of course, because they're back at another event. They play FaZe round 1, a rematch of the grand finals they had at Major 2, where they lost in very close fashion. Search and destroy might be key, but in the respawns, Thieves have certainly looked better lately, even online, and not even including the LAN buff that Thieves tend to always get. Also, there was a rumor a couple of weeks ago now that Infinity Ward were going to get rid of the red dots, right? Because the game isn't going so well, Warzone isn't looking so good, and there's some things that maybe Infinity Ward are thinking, you know what, actually, ranked players doing pretty well. Maybe the competitive players have an idea what they're talking about. They probably don't think that at all. This is very much wishful thinking. But there were some rumors that Infinity Ward were going to have to change tack completely, or Activision was saying, hey, like, your idea is not the best way because clearly it's not working in numbers and all this type of stuff that they look at on a daily basis. So there was some optimism that red dots might come back to the minimap. It's obviously not happened yet, and probably won't be happening until Trek come out with their game, which is still well over a year away at this point because we've got another year of this Modern Warfare 2 stuff. Maybe for year 2 they'll change their mind, but it seems a little bit unlikely as it stands. Let's discuss some of the OpTic stuff then, right? So they've done well so far this stage. Okay, 3-2, been a bit up and down for them. Every single series seems to go one way or another. Super inconsistent. They either win a series in impressive fashion, they lose the next one, get blown out of the water. It just seems very day-to-day whether they turn up or whether they don't. They've got a hard game 1 here up against the Boston Breach, of course, to start out this tournament, and Dashy was a crucial part of their run at Major 2. He was arguably the best player in the venue that weekend, and there's been an argument to say that with Ghosty, he's not quite the same player Dashy as he was before, as in, okay, he's the same player, the same ability, but in terms of, you know, pure execution on the map, he hasn't been quite as impactful. It's the SMGs that are taken over more, which is probably the players you want to take over more, and if Dashy does deliver the goods on LAN again, then OpTic are going to have a good chance. Quick note is actually here from Dashy and Octane in the replies, saying, you know, his take that will have you like this is jetpacks are better than boots on the ground. I know this has been obviously a big discussion over years. The community in general was deeply fed up of jetpacks when they disappeared, but over the last few years, I know there's been a lot of thoughts towards going back to a jetpack game. We, of course, saw the rumors a while ago of Advanced Warfare 2 potentially arriving, which doesn't really seem to be the case anymore, unfortunately. But we'll see. Maybe they change their mind. Maybe it is in development behind the scenes or at some point or another. And it does feel like at some point they're going to have to go back to some sort of advanced movement game, just because that's the cycle of how things go with games. But sometimes advanced movement's in fashion, sometimes it's not. So we'll see what they do. And even Octane agrees and says people who can't shoot straight like boots on the ground more. But obviously both these guys want to go back to jetpacks because I guess in terms of pure gun skill, there is more of a skill difference in those type of situations. But iLLeY said this on the 9th of February when he was dropped from the OpTic team. Restricted free agent, bang my line if you want to win. Now I think he's technically on the bench, and of course Scump has made it very clear that Scump's never returning to the competitive scene. I do wonder though, like, you know, let's say that Shotzzy or someone had a bit of an issue issue, and let's say he broke his wrist falling off a scooter, I don't know, kind of like what Lance Stroll did before the Bahrain Grand Prix, would Scump be the man to say, hey, I'm stepping in? Like, is Scump their sub or is iLLeY their sub, right? Especially because iLLeY right now is, at least based on what we saw a few days ago, is not even in the US or not even in Canada either. I believe he was back in India for at least a brief period of time to probably recollect himself, reconsider, and go again. And obviously he says here on the 9th of February, bang my line if you want to win. And no one's banged his line as yet, it seems. This was the image that I'm talking about here from a few days ago now, where seemingly in India, getting ready for revenge to join a potential new team. But the thing is, what teams could he join? And also, does he need to approach this in a slightly different way? Because so far, no team has really been hitting India up to get onto the roster. And I think, as Parasite makes a good point here in a second, the issue that players like iLLeY run into is that they're not star power players, right? And it's a weird one for iLLeY in a way, because when he was first coming into the scene, he was in the same category as Simp, the same category as Cellium, and all these other top players that are now real top players and have achieved an awful lot. iLLeY has, of course, won events. He's won a world championship on the Dallas Empire, but he's not been a slayer like we might have expected, seeing what he achieved in the search and destroy scene in his early days. He's more of a role player. He's more of like a winning mentality player, I suppose, as Parasite goes on to say, but those aren't always the players that people want to bring in. If, let's say, Minnesota Rokkr want to improve their team, will they go for an iLLeY, or will they go for a player that has maybe a higher ceiling?
I don't know about the iLLeY for like Cammy swap, or like that doesn't really. I don't know if that really makes them better. That's kind of a side grade. This is a weird one because LAG is kind of the wild card, London's kind of the wild card, and neither org seems to be in a position where they're going to pay like a buyout. So if Hector and the OpTic organization is willing to let him walk for free, yeah, we can see him on another team. But if it's a situation where someone's got to buy someone out, I don't know necessarily if it's going to happen.
But I also think, I mean, like, where do you think his stock is right now? I don't think it's high at all.
It's not because he's been sitting around for a couple of weeks. It's not like he was like a superstar slayer
on the team. Yeah,
bro. It's also the role player cheese, bro. Like, it happens at the lower levels. It's why some of these players can't come up into the CDL. He's a role player. iLLeY has not been playing and has not been a superstar performer. He's not Shotzzy, he's not Dashy, he's not aBeZy, he's not Simp. He's a winner. He's a winning mentality type player, but he's a role player, bro. And a lot of these teams, when they want to upgrade, they're not going for role players, bro. They want superstars. So it's just hard. It's hard for you to come back. Once you're out, like, you're not getting on like a super hot team until the season ends, and it's the off season, and people are looking for those. People are looking for the building blocks. That's when it's his best chance. It sucks, but it's the reality, bro. It's just how things are nowadays.
He's gonna get to the Patrick Price, hit the text, start deriding people, start working the politics.
I never did that once in my career.
Dude, what the hell? Ben, what the hell?
So this, of course, is the bracket going into the major, and some of these teams will be considering changes after the fact, but the problem is for a team like Los Angeles Guerrillas is that, they've run out of money, of course. They're going to divest their entire team at the end of the season, so they're not going to be paying a buyout for OpTic, or like from OpTic for iLLeY, especially because Scump probably doesn't really want to be their substitute full-time, right? The fact that they've got iLLeY on the bench as well means that Scump doesn't have to worry about potential occasions where he actually might have to step in for a game. Like, they could get iLLeY in if they absolutely needed to, right? Now, and I'm sure OpTic sees some value in that, rather than just letting iLLeY go for free and letting him walk to another team that he could potentially improve. The subliners, I don't imagine are going to make a change. Neither are Toronto, I imagine. Obviously, FaZe, Thieves, OpTic, Boston, they seem pretty set in stone, and Surge have improved massively, certainly in their search and destroy, where iLLeY might have been the player to help, but have turned it around on their own with accuracy, making a big step in that game mode, and their entire team has lately. So that leaves the losers bracket, right, with the Las Vegas Legion. That, okay, does iLLeY want to go there? Does he want to go to the Ravens? Does he want to go to the Mutineers? No. The only team on here that makes any sense is the Minnesota Rokkr, potentially for a move for Cammy, right? And that's the one that people are looking at right now because, Bance hasn't played so well. There's been some questions around Attach and Cammy, and I think Afro is the only man that's, probably safe on that team right now as it stands, especially if they do go out of this tournament getting top 12, and then they've got a couple of weeks to consider potential changes they might want to make to their roster. And iLLeY will want to go somewhere, I'm sure, but how many options really are there right now? And maybe more crucially, does he have the relationships to leverage to make these potential moves happen? This is what they were getting at to do with aBeZy back in the day, when aBeZy was the finesse lord, right? This guy would get on teams that people were like, how's he managed to get on there? How's he managed to get this salary? Because he's a good talker, he had good relationships, had good network, works and, you know, knew how to get what he wanted out of people, right? And you could argue whether that's manipulative, but, you know, that's just the way Eggs operated back in the day. And the amount of salary he was able to extract from Los Angeles Guerrillas in the first year, despite not being anywhere near his prime at that point, I would argue in his career, was pretty impressive. Players like iLLeY, you know, some players play the politics game well. They play the relationships, the networking game well. Other players don't necessarily. And this is also one of the reasons why sometimes you'll see players that have been dropped get into 8s all the time. Like, for example, Dashy, when he got dropped from the team, he was in 8s every single day, growing his relationships with Sib and Pred and other guys in there. Now, turns out that wasn't necessary because it was brought back onto the OpTic team. But Dashy, as soon as he was dropped, was like straight in there thinking, all right, let me, you know, make friends with new players in the scene so that, you know, because that's at the end of the day how you get some opportunities at times. It's okay, your talent might be great and you might actually be a very valuable asset, but if the players on that team don't know you, aren't sure how things are going to go, then they're going to be hesitant to make a move like that. Whereas when iLLeY was dropped from the team, he wasn't brought in straight away. Like, he wasn't going into 8s, wasn't seemingly playing too many S&D challenges and stuff. Like, he didn't turn the stream on immediately and grind for the next few days to show how good he is like Dashy did. Like, you know, iLLeY has taken a different approach, and maybe that's an approach that will hurt his chances of getting back in the league, and maybe there's an element to be discussed there. The other possibility, I suppose, out of all those options, is that iLLeY comes back to OpTic, right? Because I suppose you can't entirely rule it out depending on what happens at this major. I know there was also discussion around OpTic, the fact that they came top 4 at Major 2 with iLLeY in the team. They've now made the change for Ghosty, and, you know, let's say they place top 4 again. Like, you know, is that an improvement, right? If they don't improve, does that prove that this move was a mistake? Not necessarily, but if they come top 6, if they come top 8 here, then, you know, maybe more questions will be raised as a result as to whether this change was necessary and to whether iLLeY actually should be brought back into the team anyway, because Ghosty on an individual level was dominant in challenges, no doubt, had 1.3s. He's obviously playing a different role here, but he's inhabiting that iLLeY role, and, you know, you look at Ghosty's numbers, like, all across the game modes, he basically looks like iLLeY. If you'd have looked at Ghosty's numbers and his playstyle, and you'd have told me that was iLLeY, I'd have thought, yeah, it's probably iLLeY, right, if you didn't know his name. So do you guys think iLLeY has much chance to get back into the league soon? But I think after Major 3, there's more, I think there's like a 2-week break before the start of the Major 4 qualifiers, because I believe they changed around when Major 4 was, from when it was going to be in New York to where it is now. So I believe there's a little bit of extra time there. So there's a couple of weeks that teams have after this major to make changes, and this realistically is your final chance, right? Like, this is after this major, there's a couple of weeks for teams to figure out what they want to do, and as a result, this is possibly the last and final call to really try and make a serious upgrade before the World Championship, and it would be a shame not to see iLLeY at Champs, but the way it's going right now, it's a little bit difficult to say if iLLeY will be stuck on OpTic until the start of next season. A couple of interesting stats here. Firstly, from Brian's stats, only 6 pros ever have won at their first ever pro event attended. Scump is one, Big T, Rambo, Sharp, Dodgers, and Bobby. Scump and Bobby played together at the MLG Dallas event back in 2011, so a pretty exclusive list of players. Now, every tourney that new players turn up to, there is a chance, and some of these players do have a chance, right? Beans could join this list on Boston, Ghosty could join this list on OpTic, and Hicksy could join this list on Toronto. It just goes to show how, like, how many years it has been since the, I mean, like, what is the latest that this even happened? Like 2011, 2012, like for the last decade, there's not been any player that's won their first pro event attended, and there's a chance for some of these players to maybe pull it off this weekend. And I just wanted to close out with a clip from this at FaZe's new Perception episode. I thought this was incredibly well done, a fantastic piece of content from FaZe. What I find frustrating about, like, every team nowadays wants to do the Vision, right? They want to just go in and do the Vision episode, which is just all what OpTic have done for years, which is like a match plays, and then you get a player sitting down discussing the game and all this stuff, and it's just like very samey, boring. Like, I've seen this 1,000 times before. It's just like cookie cutter type content that all the teams for some reason decide to copy. What FaZe do instead, though, is they're much more about in this series. Like, okay, the gameplay is maybe 15% of this video in the matches they play. The rest of it is about the personalities, about the players, about the behind the scenes, about what they do in the evenings. And the final clip of aBeZy hitting the golf ball, like, this guy's got a nice swing on him. And I just feel like this is the way to do this kind of behind the scenes content, as opposed to, you know, what a lot of teams decide to copy. This is the stuff that keeps the entertainment value high. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
Let's see if I can hit 215.
High 205, 206. Too late. That one might be good. 138. This might be it. Go.